The story begins on a stage of beauty and illusion. Claire, 28, stands at the altar in a gown that whispers elegance, her hands steady but her heart carrying an unspoken weight. Daniel, 30, radiates charm, his smile crafted for guests, his words rehearsed to perfection. To anyone watching, this is the perfect couple, a flawless ceremony unfolding under the approving gaze of family and friends. But in the fragile stillness before their vows, Claire notices something most would miss: Daniel's fleeting glance toward Harper, her younger sister. It isn't the innocent connection of family, it's charged, intimate, and dangerous. In that small, nearly invisible moment, Claire's world shifts. The smile remains fixed on her lips, her poise unbroken, yet inside she feels the familiar sting of betrayal rising like a tide. Her thoughts cut through the beauty of the moment. She already knows. She has known for weeks, sensing shadows between them, whispers she wasn't meant to hear. But rather than collapse under the weight of confirmation, she masks her awareness behind grace. To the world, she is the radiant bride. To herself, she is a woman already betrayed. Later that night, when the laughter of guests has faded and champagne glasses lie abandoned, Claire walks the corridors of her new reality. She hears them before she sees them, her husband and her sister locked in a whispered quarrel. Their voices drip with urgency, every word slicing into her already raw heart. Daniel's tone is sharp, commanding, as he warns Harper to keep quiet until the timing is right. Those words strike Claire with brutal clarity. This is not a passing mistake, not a drunken kiss or fleeting attraction. It is premeditated, intentional, something that existed long before vows were spoken and rings exchanged. Standing in the shadows, Claire feels no shock, only confirmation of what her heart already knew. The betrayal is real, complete, and unforgivable. Yet, instead of storming into the room, instead of collapsing under grief or rage, she stays still. Her silence becomes her shield. She realizes in that moment that she is living in a house built on lies, a marriage poisoned from the start. And still, she refuses to give them the satisfaction of breaking her open. In the quiet aftermath of discovery, Claire withdraws, not into weakness, but into resolve. Her silence is not surrender, it is strategy. The voiceover within her mind is calm, steady, deliberate. This time, I won't warn him. Let betrayal dig its own grave. These words crystallize her transformation from victim to quiet strategist. She has been here before, hurt, deceived, stripped of trust. But now, instead of rushing to confront or plead, she makes a different choice. She understands that exposure will come not from her hands, but from the weight of their own deceit crushing them. Each stolen glance, each hushed word, each reckless meeting, they are threads unraveling a tapestry Daniel and Harper foolishly believe they can keep intact. Claire watches, waits, and holds her silence like a weapon. Beneath her composed surface, her strength grows sharper, more dangerous. What they see as her passivity is, in truth, her patience. She is no longer the naive woman who gives warnings. She is the quiet witness, the keeper of truths, the one who knows that betrayal always turns inward, consuming those who commit it. And as she smiles softly in the mirror, still in her wedding dress, Claire promises herself that when the collapse comes, it will be their ruin, not hers. Claire grew up in a household where silence was currency and appearances were everything. Her parents, deeply invested in their social standing, often reminded her that a family's reputation is more valuable than any individual feeling. From a young age, Claire learned to suppress her emotions, smoothing over conflicts to keep the facade of harmony intact. When she cried after her father's cutting remarks or her mother's cold dismissals, she was told to smile for guests and not make things uncomfortable. This training shaped her into a woman of quiet strength, resilient, composed, but carrying an internal ache she rarely revealed. When Daniel entered her life, her parents saw him as the perfect match, an ambitious lawyer, well-spoken, and from a respectable family. They pushed her toward him, praising his stability and the security he promised. For Claire, the engagement felt less like a romantic choice and more like an obligation sealed by family approval. Though she never voiced it, deep down she sensed she was being maneuvered into a gilded cage. Yet she complied, as she always had, because that was what was expected, because peace, no matter how false, had been drilled into her as worth more than truth. Daniel thrives on admiration. To the outside world, He is magnetic, an attorney with sharp suits, clever words, and an ability to light up a room with his presence. But behind closed doors, his charisma turns calculating. He interrupts Claire mid-sentence, dismisses her ideas as impractical, and treats her concerns as trivial inconveniences. To Daniel, relationships are transactions, marriage secures his image, and Claire's loyalty becomes another asset in his portfolio of success. Harper, on the other hand, embodies restlessness. At 24, she lives with the ache of never being enough, never as composed, never as admired, never as loved as her older sister. She envies Claire's grace, her quiet poise, her ability to draw respect without demanding it. For Harper, attention is survival. She thrives in the limelight, but the shadow of her sister's calm strength leaves her feeling perpetually overlooked. Her attraction to Daniel is born less from genuine love and more from the intoxicating thrill of taking what Claire has. With Daniel, she doesn't feel like second choice, she feels wanted, desired, alive. Yet underneath, Harper's longing is tangled with resentment. What Claire views as betrayal, Harper secretly frames as justice for years of living in her sister's shadow. Away from the staged perfection of her marriage, Claire nurtures a private sanctuary. Late at night, when Daniel is absorbed in his work or absent altogether, she opens her journal and fills its pages with sketches of clothing designs, dreams of a small boutique where her creativity might finally breathe. These sketches are more than fashion, they are fragments of her identity, the parts of herself that no one in her family or marriage bothers to see. To Claire, the marriage was supposed to provide stability, a foundation for her to quietly pursue her aspirations. Instead, it has become a gilded cage, golden on the outside but suffocating within. The cracks reveal themselves in subtle but relentless ways. Daniel dismisses her sketches as hobbies, cutting off her sentences in conversations with friends, as though her voice has no weight. He ignores her needs, leaving her emotionally starved while performing the role of the devoted husband in public. These small humiliations accumulate, each one planting seeds of betrayal long before his affair with Harper is exposed. Claire feels the walls of her life closing in, but her silence remains intact, because for now, silence is the only power she knows how to wield. Yet beneath it, her quiet resolve begins to harden. She is not as weak as Daniel and Harper believe. Weeks after the wedding, the sheen of celebration has faded, leaving Claire alone with the quiet truth of her marriage. One evening, while tidying Daniel's office, she notices something out of place, a phone, tucked beneath a stack of files. It's not his usual device. This one is older, hidden, deliberately concealed. The air stills around her as she unlocks it, the passcode a simple variation of his birthday. Within seconds, the screen confirms what her intuition had whispered all along, messages between Daniel and Harper, their words soaked in intimacy and guilt. "I can't stop thinking about you," Daniel writes. "She suspects nothing," Harper replies. The exchange is undeniable, a digital dagger through her heart. The betrayal is no longer shadows or suspicion, it is etched in words, time-stamped, irrefutable. Claire doesn't cry, doesn't scream. Instead, she stares at the glowing screen in silence, her pulse steady, her expression unreadable. This is the moment where fantasy collapses. This is the breaking point where love, or the illusion of it, finally dies. But for Claire, it is not the end. It is the beginning of something sharper, colder, and infinitely stronger. That night, Claire retreats into her sanctuary, her journal. She doesn't rage across its pages or confess her pain in long laments. Instead, she writes a single, deliberate line: "Every man who betrays marriage loses more than love, he loses the very life he's building. But I won't be the one to remind him." The words land heavy, not as a threat, but as a vow. This is her creed, her quiet curse, not born of superstition but of observation. Betrayal destroys from within. She knows that Daniel, for all his cunning, is blind to the slow unraveling his choices will cause. And Harper, so desperate to feel chosen, doesn't see the destruction that comes with taking what was never meant to be hers. Claire, however, sees it all. She chooses not to intervene, not to warn, not to save. Her silence is no longer compliance, it is prophecy. Every line she writes in her journal becomes both record and omen, a testament that she will not lower herself to their level. Instead, she will let time, truth, and their own recklessness tighten the noose. What Daniel and Harper mistake as her fragility is, in truth, the steel of a woman who has mastered restraint. In the days that follow, Claire makes her choice not to confront, not to collapse, but to watch. Quietly, carefully, she begins documenting everything: the late-night absences, the hurried phone calls, the receipts Daniel forgets to hide. Each note she jots down is not an act of vengeance but of strategy. She refuses to be painted as the hysterical wife, refuses to let them twist her pain into weakness. Instead, she becomes the observer, the recorder, the quiet shadow they don't notice is watching. To the world, she still plays her role: the composed wife, the graceful daughter, the calm sister. But beneath that mask, her strength sharpens. Every insult Daniel mutters, every glance Harper steals, every lie spoken aloud, they fuel her resolve. The audience doesn't see Claire exploding in fury. They see her rising in silence, her power blooming not through outbursts but through patience. This is where her transformation begins, from the woman shaped by her family's pressure to the woman who shapes her own destiny. By choosing restraint over confrontation, Claire seizes control in the only way her betrayers cannot anticipate: by letting their own sins destroy them. Daniel thrives in public spaces, where appearances are currency. At work dinners, he drapes an arm over Claire's chair, his smile polished, his tone affectionate enough to draw envy. To colleagues and friends, they are the picture of a perfect marriage: hands entwined, laughter shared, eyes locked in rehearsed devotion. But Claire knows the script too well. The warmth vanishes the moment they leave the stage. Harper's presence becomes a regular intrusion, always nearby, always hovering just close enough to ignite suspicion in others, but never so blatant that it can be condemned. Claire never calls them out, not because she is blind, but because silence is her chosen weapon. The irony burns deeper when Daniel flips the narrative, accusing her of being too suspicious, even when she hasn't spoken a word. His gaslighting is precise, aimed to make her doubt her perceptions, to make her feel as though she is the one poisoning the marriage with mistrust. Harper, ever complicit, adds her own subtle poison, murmuring that Claire is too cold, not affectionate enough, the kind of sisterly concern that twists sympathy into accusation. In public, Claire smiles. In private, she absorbs the blows with the grace of someone who refuses to give them the spectacle of her pain. Instead of surrendering to despair, Claire turns inward. Her journal fills with sketches more vivid than ever, each design a quiet declaration of life beyond Daniel's control. What began as a fragile hobby becomes an act of rebellion, lines of fabric and form that reclaim her voice. While Daniel plays the role of the devoted husband and Harper basks in stolen intimacy, Claire builds a world they cannot touch. Secretly, she begins networking with boutique owners online, testing the waters of independence. The internet becomes her clandestine lifeline, a space where she is not Daniel's wife or Harper's sister, but Claire, the artist, the dreamer, the strategist. Every email sent, every encouraging reply received, strengthens her resolve. Her rebellion is not loud, not visible, but it grows stronger with each passing day. She begins to carve out an identity not defined by betrayal or duty, but by creation and vision. For Claire, these sketches are more than fashion, they are blueprints for freedom. She knows she cannot escape overnight, but with every hidden step, she builds a foundation. Daniel may believe she is complacent, Harper may think she has won, but neither of them sees the quiet fire burning behind Claire's calm exterior. As the weeks pass, isolation tightens its grip. Friends who once confided in Claire now drift toward Daniel, charmed by his charisma, blind to his cruelty. Invitations grow fewer, messages unanswered, until she realizes she is standing alone in a world that believes his version of the story. Her parents, too, praise Daniel's ambition and Harper's helpfulness, never questioning the dynamic unfolding before their eyes. The betrayal becomes heavier, not only because of Daniel and Harper's deceit, but because of the silence of those around her. Yet in this loneliness, Claire's journal becomes her anchor, pages filled with sketches, thoughts, and fragments of truth that only she knows. Daniel, however, begins to notice her silence, and it unsettles him. Her lack of reaction gnaws at him more than accusations ever could. He becomes sharper, more paranoid, testing her with leading questions, probing for signs of confrontation that never come. His unease is proof that her restraint is power. What he cannot see unnerves him. What Harper cannot claim frustrates her. And what Claire holds, quietly, patiently, is the promise of inevitable collapse. The cracks are no longer hers, they belong to them. The family gathering is polished perfection, crystal glasses clinking, polite laughter filling the air, and Daniel once again performing the role of charming husband. Harper, emboldened by her secret role in Daniel's life, seizes her chance to wound Claire in front of everyone. She leans across the table, the sparkle of a necklace catching the light, and draws attention to it with feigned modesty. "Oh, this," she says with a coy smile. It was a gift, so thoughtful. The implication hangs heavy, daring Claire to react. But instead of cracking, the room shifts uneasily. Harper's smirk falters, and Daniel stiffens. Everyone expects a scene, an eruption, but Claire gives them nothing. Her poise is unshakable, her silence more damning than an accusation. In that moment, she asserts control not by shouting, but by showing she cannot be broken. The necklace becomes not a symbol of Harper's triumph, but of her exposure. Just as the family absorbs the tension, the evening takes an unexpected turn. Daniel's phone buzzes with urgent calls he tries to dismiss, but the whispers spread quickly. His law firm is under investigation. A fraud scandal has erupted, and Daniel is at its center. Paper trails, falsified accounts, hidden transfers, everything meticulously traced back to him. As panic ripples through the family, a quieter truth emerges. The leak that triggered the investigation originated from within his home. While Daniel had been too consumed with his affair to notice, Claire had been documenting his misconduct, piecing together the evidence with the same patience she used to collect proof of his betrayal. She had handed it, carefully, anonymously, to the right people. The audience realizes that her silence was not passivity, it was precision. Daniel, who once viewed her as an accessory, has been undone by the woman he underestimated. Harper, tied to him through suspicious transactions and knowledge of his actions, finds herself implicated as well. The betrayal they believed they controlled has inverted, their secrecy has become their downfall, orchestrated by the very woman they dismissed. The fallout is swift and merciless. Daniel's career collapses overnight, his reputation in ruins, his family ashamed. Harper, once craving attention and validation, is now branded an accomplice and cut off by the very relatives who once tolerated her. The curse Claire once wrote in her journal is fulfilled not through rage, but through inevitability. Betrayal devours itself. In the wreckage of their ambitions, Claire does not stay to savor their ruin. She moves quietly, suitcase in hand, her face calm, her silence resonant. No dramatic farewell, no final argument, just the sound of her heels against the floor as she walks out. Her departure is louder than any rage could be, a final refusal to give them her voice. In her absence, the weight of her strength lingers, haunting them. She does not need to destroy Daniel and Harper, they've destroyed themselves. And as the door closes behind her, the audience feels the sharp, aching release of justice, the quiet triumph of a woman who chose patience over fury, truth over illusion, selfhood over chains. Claire's boutique is not grand, but every corner hums with her fingerprints, sunlight spilling across bolts of fabric, a mannequin draped in her latest design, sketches pinned along the wall like a gallery of dreams. She works late into the night, not out of obligation but out of passion, humming softly as she stitches. For the first time, exhaustion feels sweet, not suffocating. Each dress she creates carries pieces of her story, strength woven into silk, resilience stitched into lace. Her clients are drawn not only to her artistry but to her calm presence, the way she listens, the way she seems to understand unspoken fears. Claire lives with less luxury than she had with Daniel, but with infinitely more joy. Every small success, a satisfied bride, a glowing review, a new order, feels like a victory carved from the ashes of betrayal. She is no longer trapped in a role designed by her parents or defined by her husband's ambitions. She is Claire, designer, entrepreneur, survivor, and woman fully alive in her truth. The healing begins in unexpected ways. Her parents, once obsessed with appearances, step into her boutique hesitantly, carrying the weight of their own guilt. Her father, usually stern and immovable, pauses by the sketches on her wall before whispering words Claire never thought she'd hear. "You were right. Appearance isn't worth a broken soul." The admission is quiet, almost fragile, but it unravels years of unspoken pain. Later, Harper arrives, her eyes swollen from tears, her voice trembling as she pleads for forgiveness. She blames Daniel, insists she was lost, manipulated, desperate. Claire listens without anger, her expression soft but steady. "I forgave you the day I chose myself," she tells her sister gently. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. The words are not punishment, but boundary, clear, firm, unbreakable. In that moment, Harper realizes she cannot reclaim the closeness she destroyed, but Claire's compassion spares her from total condemnation. The exchange is not reconciliation, but it is release. Meanwhile, Daniel's downfall is complete. Stripped of his law license, disgraced in his community, abandoned by colleagues who once applauded him, he is left bitter and isolated. He sits alone in the same home that once symbolized success, its silence suffocating. He thinks often of Claire, of how he dismissed her, underestimated her, and how she walked away without a word, leaving him to collapse under the weight of his own arrogance. The curse she wrote in her journal was never mystical. It was the natural consequence of betrayal, of hubris, of believing he was untouchable. Daniel begins to understand too late that every choice carved his ruin, that the life he lost was not stolen but surrendered by his own hands. Claire, however, does not dwell on his downfall. Her empowerment is not tied to his punishment but to her freedom. As she locks up her boutique one evening, looking out at the city alive with possibility, she smiles softly. She doesn't need to remind Daniel of his curse. He already lives it. And she, at last, lives free. Months have passed since Claire walked away from the ruins of her marriage, and life now carries a different rhythm. She sits in the soft glow of her boutique, sketching at a wooden table by the window. The space is modest but hers, filled with racks of flowing fabrics, delicate lace, and pieces stitched from dreams that once lived only in her journal. The bell above the door jingles, and a young woman steps inside, nervously clutching her hands. She admits she's searching for a wedding dress but feels overwhelmed, unsure of what suits her. Claire rises, her demeanor calm, her voice warm, carrying none of the bitterness her past could have left behind. With gentle assurance, she guides the bride-to-be through the fabrics, holding out pieces with kindness and patience. The young woman relaxes, smiling for the first time, her shoulders easing under Claire's encouragement. In that moment, Claire realizes the full circle of her journey. Where once marriage felt like a cage, she now helps others walk into it with joy, not fear. The quiet power of her healing lies not in what she lost, but in what she now gives. Later that evening, when the boutique is quiet again, Claire retrieves a garment bag from the back room. Inside is her second wedding dress, the one her mother insisted she keep, just in case. It had never touched the altar, never felt like hers, a symbol of duty rather than desire. She folds it carefully, places it in a donation box, and slips a handwritten note into the pocket of the gown. "May this dress bring someone joy, not chains." Her hands linger for a moment on the fabric, not with regret, but with release. The gesture is quiet yet profound. What once symbolized entrapment now becomes a gift of freedom for another. By letting go of the dress, she severs the last thread tying her to the life others tried to force upon her. The act is not about the dress itself but about reclaiming her story. It is closure in its most symbolic form, choosing to transform what once suffocated her into something that may breathe happiness for someone else. Claire doesn't look back when the box is sealed. Instead, she feels lighter, as though an invisible weight has been lifted from her shoulders. That night, Claire sits once more at her desk, journal open, pen in hand. The pages are no longer filled only with pain or sketches of escape, they are alive with plans for her boutique, ideas for designs, letters of encouragement to herself. On a fresh page, she writes the final line of this chapter of her life: "I won't remind him of the curse that comes with betraying marriage. He already lives it. And I live free." She closes the journal with a soft exhale, the sound of peace rather than resignation. The camera of the story lingers on her, no grand fanfare, no dramatic declarations, just a woman who has quietly rebuilt herself, piece by piece. Outside the window, the city hums with life, and for the first time, Claire feels fully a part of it, not trapped behind glass but living freely within it. The power of her journey lies not in revenge but in resilience. The story doesn't end with her defining herself by what was taken, but by what she created. And as she leans back in her chair, light from the street casting a gentle glow over her sketches, the audience understands, this is not just an ending. It's a beginning.